Well, my name is Rhee, and I taught at Jungang University, which is one of the longest. It has longest history in early childhood education. But I retired, and I was the president of Pacific Early Childhood Education Research Association. It's a world organization for early education professionals. Well, it's my great honor to be a moderator of this forum, since this is the very first time in Korea to consider early education as an important aspect for the economic development and global human resource development. It never happened in Korea. And somehow, our Ministry of Education, Science and Technology and Korean Research Institute for Vocational Education and Training and the Korea Economic Daily included early education in this forum. We really were amazed about this accident or event. Well, I really think early education is the most important variable in economic development because human beings are the resources for the development. Also, I would like to thank you to the distinguished guests who came to Korea to share their experience with us. I know we learned a lot from America, and when I visited Norway 20 years ago, the quality of early education was really superior. So I'm so glad that both of them came here to share. The first speaker is Dr. Stephen Barnett, who is handsome and sitting beside me. And he is director of National Institute for Early Childhood Education Research. I'm not quite sure about the pronunciation, but Rutgers University, am I right? Yeah. Good. And he is studying a lot of things about early education and young children. And second speaker will be Deputy Minister of Ministry of Education and Research in Norway. Well, she is 차관보 position in Korea. That means a woman can work, right? For Ministry of Education. So I hope we can see female Deputy Minister or Minister of Education in Korea sometime soon. Well, and I would like to introduce my two Korean colleagues who really work hard to make good policies for young children for the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, and who contributed to make a united early curriculum under name Nuri curriculum this year. They really is good. They are good leaders in our field. So you can share what's going on in Korea. Well, her name is Eunhae Park, Dr. Eunhae Park. She teaches at Ewha Women's University. Well, I forgot. Deputy Elizabeth. Maybe I'm nervous. Yeah, our Deputy Minister of Norway, her name is Elizabeth Dahl. Yeah, right? Yeah, and third one, Eunhae Park and Eunsu Shin are discussants. And Eunhae Park is teaching at Ewha Women's University, and Shin Eunsu is a professor of Deokseong Women's University. As you recognize, well, in Korea, 99% of professionals in early education and care are females, right? Well, so it's time to hear Dr. Barnett, Stephen Barnett. The topic is Better Early Childhood for Cultivating Future Talents. We are ready to listen to your good speech.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Professor Rhee. I am delighted to be here to speak with you this morning. It's a great honor. I think that Professor Rhee spoke about learning from America, but in America now we are learning from you about how to provide quality early childhood programs and good public policy. I'm an economist. I discovered early childhood education 25 years ago. Not that people didn't know about it, but economists did not know about it 25 years ago and did not appreciate the value of investments in early education. When I first discovered this, in fact, it seemed like something of a miracle, that providing a preschool program to children at ages 3 and 4 could transform their lives, not just when they entered school, but over a lifetime. That piqued my curiosity. I started studying it and indeed found myself looking at estimates, creating estimates of the economic value of this impact, and I've continued that work. I will discuss in more specifics the specific study that I began with 25 years ago. I started working on the age 19 follow-up. We're now in the age 50 follow-up of a study that began when children were age 3. But to go to my specific talking points this morning. The question I'm really going to address is, why should the public invest its resources? Why should governments invest in early care and education? What is the rationale for investing public money? What are the returns? And I'm going to have to do that, I'm going to have to review a wide range of research, because it's not just economics, it's neuroscience, education, and psychology research over the last 50 years, all converging on a single conclusion, that investments in quality early care and education produce high rates of economic return. Well, why is that? In very general terms, because the first 5 years lay the foundations for language, for academic abilities, for habits of life, for social emotional development. And they put a child on a course. The window of opportunity for influencing the brain development and laying down this foundation does not close after age 5, but catch-up later is much more costly than investing correctly in the first 5 years. If we look at the consequences of our current policies worldwide, it's estimated there are more than 200 million children under the age of 5 who are failing to reach their developmental potential because of inadequate investments in early care and education. Then finally, we put all this together, we find that high quality, and I'm going to come back to this topic of quality because it's a key, high quality early care and education can enhance learning and development and thereby produce high long-term economic returns. Now, I'm often asked, so what does the research actually say? Policymakers in particular ask that question, and too often what that means is, can I find a study that supports my point of view? That's not actually how we summarize science. And one more objective way of doing that is to statistically summarize all of the evidence from all the studies, not my opinion about the evidence, not whether I like a study or don't like it, not whether I like the conclusions or don't like them, but summarize all of the studies. And my institute, the National Institute for Early Education Research, has done this with all of the research in the United States that looked at the impacts of preschool programs since 1960. And this table summarizes those results in a standardized format. And if you look at the size of these effects, to put it in context, an effect of 1 is about the same size as the difference in achievement between poor children and other children in the United States. So an effect of 1 could close the entire achievement gap between poor children and other children. So we've looked at the results from all studies, that's the bar in yellow, from studies that have higher quality research designs, because the quality of the research does matter, that's the blue bar. And then we've said, well, this is looking at all programs that have been studied, but some programs are better than others. What if we look at high quality programs, and that's the red bar. And so the first set of bars show you what are the impacts in the research at the end of treatment, at the end of preschool period, roughly age 5. And you can see high-quality programs have an effect of almost 1. That is, the effect is almost powerful enough to close the entire achievement gap in the United States between poor children and other children at age 5. If we move later on, we see that these are smaller. This is a general pattern in the research. Long-term impacts are about half the size of immediate impacts. If you want to have big long-term impacts, you have to have really big immediate impacts. But even the long-term impacts are almost about half an effect size, 0.5. What does that mean? It means with high-quality early care and education alone, we could close half the achievement gap in the United States between poor children and other children at the end of secondary school, at adulthood. So, of course, as I've said, not all effects are equal. Time of follow-up matters. Longer-term effects are smaller. Higher quality research finds larger effects. But what about the program itself? One of the things that's very important is intentional teaching. Intentional teaching has a positive effect. Individualization, that means working in small groups and one-on-one with children. And then, oddly enough, the delivery of comprehensive services in the United States, social services, health services, family services, by the same program, actually results in smaller impacts on children. This is not what we expected to find. I think it's probably because if you ask a program to do too much with too little, you weaken a program. Now, if we move beyond the United States, we've done the same kind of summary for research around the globe outside the United States. And this presents a summary of the results from 3 different kinds of programs: nutrition programs, conditional cash transfers. A conditional cash transfer program is a program where parents are given money. The money itself has an impact on the family, but the money is conditional on the parent ensuring that the child receives nutritional supplementation or goes to an early care and education program or into primary school. And then programs that have a substantial education cognitive stimulation component. The good news is, if we look at cognitive outcomes, social outcomes, schooling outcomes, and health outcomes, that all of these kinds of programs all have effects, but the effects differ. And in fact, if you want to have big impacts on cognitive development, on schooling outcomes, education programs have larger impacts than others, but all of them are effective. If we want to summarize across all the research, what does this mean in terms of meaningful outcomes for children? Increased achievement test scores, decreased needs for special education because of disabilities, decreased grade repetition because of school failure, increased educational attainment, that is more completion of secondary school, more entrance into higher education, decreased behavior problems, delinquency and crime. All of those things together contribute to increased employment, earnings, and self-sufficiency. We also see decreases in risky behavior like smoking and drug use, and improved mental health like decreases in depression. If we look at what are the consequences of these for governments, decreased schooling costs, decreased social services costs, decreased crime costs, decreased health costs. Think about, from an economic perspective, what are the major financial challenges confronted by governments today? All of them are addressed by investments in early care and education programs, making this an important economic policy, not just educational policy. Now, I want to very quickly spend some time getting into the details of 3 different studies. These were conducted over several decades in the United States, all with disadvantaged, that is, low-income children. The Abecedarian program is birth to 5 full year-round childcare. The Chicago and High Scope programs are part-day preschool programs that began at age 3. Abecedarian and High Scope are true randomized trials that makes them very strong scientifically. The Chicago program is much larger scale and not a randomized trial, but also very rigorous. If we look at the results, all of them had big impacts initially on children's cognitive development. The question is, what happens later? So move forward to the adolescent years. In the High Scope study, decreases in the need for special education because of disabilities, increased achievement test scores at age 14. High school graduation moved from 50% to 2/3. By the time they were 27 and again at age 40, they were earning more money, they were more likely to be employed, they were more likely to have a savings account. If we look at the social side of life, they were less likely to have been arrested, less likely to have committed a violent crime, less likely to have committed a drug crime. We move to the Abecedarian program. Remember, this is now birth to 5, full-day, year-round child care delivering education, very intensive. We find all of the same kinds of effects, only larger. Decreases in the need for special education, decreases in grade repetition, about the same size effect on high school graduation, increase in 4-year college higher education participation. And then we look at the Chicago program. What makes the Chicago program especially interesting is it is just a typical public school preschool program for 3- and 4-year-olds. Typical of a high-quality program, but it's not a program run by researchers. It's not a university program. It's a program delivered on a large scale in the city of Chicago. We find all of the same kinds of effects: increased secondary school completion, decreases in the need for special education, decreased grade repetition, decreased arrests, but the effects are smaller. So even with these 3 studies, we see a dose-response relationship. The more extensive and intensive the early care and education, the bigger the impacts. All right, now this is where it would really be good to see the chart. But my job as an economist, there we go, is to put dollar values on these. And I understand, even though I'm an economist, that you can't put a dollar value on everything. You can't put a dollar value on pride. You can't put a dollar value on all of the consequences of being gainfully employed positively as opposed to being involved in a life of crime. But what we can put dollar values on turns out to have a very large impact. And so this is discounted net present value. For those of you who are in economics, you'll understand that means that we're valuing a dollar at age 19 at something like 20 or 30 cents because of the discounting. So this is essentially how much, what's the value as a trade-in of the investment on preschool the day the child walks in the door, right? You can see these programs had very different costs. The benefits are all much higher than the costs, sometimes an order of magnitude or more higher. The benefits vary somewhat across programs because of the circumstances. The Abecedarian program was in a college community with relatively little crime. If you don't have a problem, you can't fix it. The other programs were in urban centers with much higher crime rates. One of the reasons I think they have much higher rates of return. Okay. Now, if we look around the globe at today's programs, we find evidence not just from the United States, but some from the United States about not what just these research studies from many years ago have to say, but what's happening with public policies that we have right now. So across OECD countries, there is variation in the provision of early care and education. And if you look at what happens in adolescence to test scores, you see that as participation moves toward 100% in a country, you increase average test scores and decrease inequality in test scores within a country. We have evidence from France that universal preschool education improves long-term educational outcomes and earnings, and that earlier is better. In the United Kingdom, Argentina, and Uruguay, three very different countries, we find in all of those that preschool increases educational achievement. In the United States, we find that public programs increase achievement and measures of executive function. This is ability to pay attention, ability to control your emotions, to think before you act, to plan before you take action. Very important skill in both social life, school, and economic life. In Norway, we find that increased access to childcare improves educational outcomes and equalizes earnings. I think you'll hear more about the quality of the program in Norway and its outcomes. In Canada, Quebec has provided universal low-quality childcare, also very low cost, and we do not see the same kinds of positive outcomes. And if we look at other countries such as Denmark, we see mixed outcomes depending on the quality of the program, with positive outcomes from higher quality programs. So if we again look around the world, if we look not just at higher income countries, but middle and low income countries, we actually now have estimates of the economic return that say the economic return from increased investment in early care and education is somewhere between 6 to 1 and 18 to 1. Interestingly, this is the same order of magnitude as in the United States for investing in low-income children, and that investing globally, if we increased our investments in middle and low-income countries by 25% in early care and education, that the net present value of that would be about $10 billion. So, summarizing this information from around the globe, not all early care and education is equal. The effects and the economic returns depend on the quality and to some extent the quantity. But quantity, that is how much you provide, only matters if you have quality. More of something that's not effective is not more effective. Quality teacher-child interaction is a key part of this, and it depends on teacher skills and the numbers of students per teacher. Remember, in the research, very important was the amount of one-to-one interaction and small group interaction. Program and teacher development to provide teachers with these skills requires a continuous improvement cycle with reflection and planning. So it's not just a focus on making teachers teach, on engaged teaching time, but also on reflection and improvement. How do we ensure quality? We begin with a proven program design. This has to be, if we want to produce the kinds of economic returns, and I'm saying this not as an educator, but as an economist, we need a balanced approach, cognitive and social, hard skills and soft skills. Why is that? Because the paths to program effects are different for increased test scores and decreased crime. The path to improved productivity as an employee is probably both hard skills and soft skills. Employers understand these, but you have to teach, you have to provide opportunities to learn both of them. We need well-trained, adequately paid teachers if we're going to accomplish these goals with strong supervision and monitoring, and we need to use data to inform and reform practice. How do we do this? With the continuous improvement cycle. Those of you who are in early childhood will be familiar with plan, do, review. In business, it's called a continuous improvement cycle. It's the same thing we teach 3-year-olds, but a little more complicated. First, we must develop standards. What is it that we want to achieve? What is it that we want programs to look like? Then we assess and measure our progress in meeting those standards. Based on that information, we conduct an analysis and plan for the improvements that we need to make, and then we have to implement professional development and technical assistance to the practitioners, to the program directors, the teachers, the teacher assistants, so they can take advantage of this information. Then we repeat the cycle, measure and assess progress, and go through it again. So in conclusion, early care and education can be a wise public investment. I say can because it depends on how we implement the program and policies. If we implement it so as to increase both hard and soft skills, to attend to both cognitive development and social emotional development, we will get higher test scores, increased educational attainment, increased employment and productivity, decreased social problems like economic dependency, like drug use, poor health, and all of this will result in less inequality. Right? One of the things that's clear as we look at that evidence that I went through is that the impacts are greatest on the most disadvantaged. Those who start behind gain most. So it not only has positive economic return, but decreases inequality at the same time. Very few economic policies that accomplish both of those objectives together. Quality is essential for achieving these positive outcomes, and yes, quality is expensive, it's costly, but lack of quality costs us far more. The reverse of all of those benefits that I showed you are the social costs that are weighing us down currently and preventing economic progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Dr. Barnett. He worried about his slow speech, but he talked every single thing he wanted to tell us. Well, he mentioned about the investment for young children's care and education, but he emphasized that the quality is the most important factor in investment. So even though we can well, we have to wait until young children become well-developed. It takes time. We cannot grow young children in a day. So he wanted us to wait and give them good quality environment, good quality teacher, good quality early childhood program is really important. But in Korea, we have pali-pali disease. So we want to make students achieve the best score in a day, right? So that's why young children and young students are unhappy in our country. So we have to learn Dr. Barnett's message. Let's go slowly for young children and wait until they can bloom. They have to root their character strongly in the ground. Thank you, Steve. Now, we will listen to Elizabeth Dahl, a Deputy Minister of Norway, Ministry of Education, right? Yeah.
Honorable participants, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to be invited to this global forum and to give a presentation of this important topic, providing children with the best start for tomorrow. Investing in early childhood education and care is investing in the future. Education is the key to productive and innovative workforce. It is also the key to developing and refining a democratic culture. The headline of this session is Better Early Childhood Education for Cultivating Future Talents. I'd like to turn the title around and propose to talk to you about how ECEC plays a role in cultivating the human talents that are important for the child's life here and now and for the future. I want to introduce the topic by making 5 policy statements. Firstly, investing in high-quality ECEC is beneficial both to the child, families, and society, and gives a high return. Secondly, accessible, inclusive, and integrated education makes for a sustainable society and a sustainable future. Thirdly, innovative learning in education celebrates diversity of talents, the value of play, and promotes well-being and motivation through active participation from children and students. The fourth point, and perhaps most important, an education for the future should nurture curiosity, creativity, and community. Finally, I want to put it forward that broad and global discussions can promote better education, both for early childhood and beyond. In one of the most popular presentations on TED.com, Sir Ken Robinson asks the question whether schools kills creativity. He proposes that we develop an education system that nurture creativity and acknowledge a broader set of talents. And he talks about the potential in dancing and in daring to be wrong. I'll get back to this topic, but first I want to share with you some contextual information about Norway and the role early childhood education and care. Norway is blessed with rich natural resources, not only oil and gas, but also forestry, power supply, and fish. Sorry, I touched there. Oil production started in 1971, and today Norway is one of the world's largest oil and gas exporters. But our biggest asset is not oil. It is estimated that human capital constitutes 70 to 80% of Norway's national wealth. Education policy has played a major role in developing the economy, and it is our belief that it will be even more important in the years to come. How we manage our human capital is by the far most important factor for our nation's prosperity. The rather small Nordic countries with large public sectors, including education and welfare services, and with high taxation, have performed quite well economically, even during the financial crisis. We want to hold on to our Nordic welfare model, but this can only be secured through a high workforce. When Dr. William White from OECD gave his speech to the ministers in the round table on ECEC in Norway in January, he talked about how to make a case for public investment in ECEC when budgets are tight. He put forward that inequality might hinder economic growth and that cooperation, trust, and fairness are important to meet economic crisis. Our government holds equity and fairness as fundamental values, and we want to put policies in place to reduce inequalities. A public committee giving advice on this was clear. We should invest in education, and especially kindergartens, to give all children a good start. The OECD has clearly documented that high-quality early childhood education and care is one of the most important means to secure the labor participation of both parents. Norwegian female employment has increased steadily since the beginning of the 70s and is one factor behind the successful Norwegian economic performance. In fact, Norway has one of the highest female participation rates in the workforce in the world, constituting nearly 70% in 2010. This means that we have to develop policies to enable parents to balance family and work, which includes ensuring accessible, high-quality kindergartens. Kindergartens in Norway are pedagogical institutions that provide education and care for children from 0 to compulsory school. Due to the fact that parents are entitled to paid parental leave the first year, the age range is normally 1 to 5. Gender equality is not only a question of policies for women. In order to close the gender gap and promote equality, we have now given fathers exclusive right to 12 of the 47 or 57 weeks of paid parental leave. Flexible and coherent solutions are beneficial to parents, work life and society, but also to the child. Caring mothers and fathers that share responsibility and participate actively in their children's lives give the child a richer start. As you can see, Norwegian fertility rates are in the upper range in the OECD area, with an average of about 2. For a long time, spending on programs for young children was viewed as an immediate cost. As we heard from Dr. Bonnet in this presentation, research has now shown beyond doubt that economic rationale for investing is high-quality ECEC. Happy for solid economical arguments, policymakers all over the world have been referring to Nobel laureate Professor James Heckman and his arguments for investing in preschool programs. A Norwegian report shows that for €1 invested in ECEC, the return on investment is 3. Since our government took office in 2005, we therefore put in place measures taking the last steps transforming ECEC from a selective welfare good to a universal right. These policy measures include increased public funding, maximum parental fees, strengthen equality between public and private provision, and developing new legislation and governance. The state budget of the sector was tripled from 2003 to 2010. The political goal was, in this case, coupled with political will to prioritize, and I might add, across political divisions. It was a question of fairness. The immediate effect of public investment can be seen on the development in kindergarten coverage. In 1970, 3% of children went to kindergarten. In 2003, the level was 70%. In 2009, the right to a kindergarten place for children from one year of age entered into force, and now 90% of all children between 1 and 5 years of age have a place in kindergarten. As you can see, the increase has been especially strong for children under 3 years of age. In fact, 80% of all 1- and 2-year-olds attend kindergarten, and the figures for 3-, 4-, and 5-year-olds vary from 95% to 97%. I proposed in my introduction that accessible, inclusive, and integrated education makes for a sustainable society and a sustainable future. We see kindergartens as an important arena for inclusion and integration. Children should have equal opportunities for participation, development, and learning regardless of family background, gender, or social and economical status. We know from research that migrant children will benefit from taking part, both in terms of language development and social skills. Migrant children have been participating in kindergarten to a lesser degree than all children. They still do, but the gap is slowly closing. For 4- and 5-year-olds, participation levels are almost the same, and the percentage for 2-year-old migrant children taking part in kindergarten has doubled since we came in office, from 30% to 60%. We know it takes 2 to 5 years to learn a second language, so this is very important. As a politician, economical arguments weighs heavily, but it is also a question of values and of the quality of the society we want to develop. We are committed to develop a society with room for all, with active participants in a democratic society. We believe kindergartens provide children with opportunities for learning to be, learning to learn, and learning to live together. Democracy and participation are laying the foundations for citizenship. When we revised our Kindergarten Act in 2005, we introduced a right for children to participate and to express their views on the day-to-day activities of the kindergarten and to take active part in the planning and assessment of activities. The demands of staff, this demands of staff that they are able to relate to and understand the expression of the individual child, regardless of age, level of function, gender, and social, ethnic, or cultural background. Participation is not about counting votes, it is about listening in. Participation gives children both a sense of belonging, trust in themselves and of themselves and of community. Diversity and multiculturalism should be seen as assets. Diversity makes life richer and it helps develop the ability to cope in an ever-changing and globalized world. Truly inclusive and integrated services therefore helps cultivate talents for the future. A happy childhood lasts through life. It also sees the value of play and the intrinsic value of childhood. One of the characteristics of childhood is interaction through play, which provides scope for initiative, imagination, and enthusiasm. By providing children with centered-based education and care from early age, we must ensure that these new important arenas for living their childhood have the qualities that allow the children to develop into their full potential as active citizens, both here and now and in the future. It means developing ECEC that focus on the broad tasks, not only supporting in their development of language, academic and cognitive skills, but providing room for play, imagination and joy. The Nordic model is often described as educare. It holds true. There is no care without education and no education without care. Giving children the opportunity to give and receive care forms the basis for developing social competence and plays an important role in the context of lifelong learning. Norwegian kindergarten's tradition takes a holistic view of learning. A lot of care is required in order to give children varied challenges and the opportunity for meaningful activities. The children's own interests and questions should form the basis for learning process and teams of kindergarten. The educational work in Nordic kindergartens is based on a tradition of dialogue, curiosity, and exploration. The preschool teachers are trained to see the children's interests and use them in pedagogical situations in everyday life. Development of children's basic competence involves strengthening their social and communication skills in a broad sense. Children's learning takes place while they play, but also in more organized and structured situations. Staff needs to find a balance between activities initiated by children and by the adults. In order to the staff to plan a varied pedagogical program, the content are divided into 7 learning areas that are seen as important for children's experience and exploration. These are consistent with learning areas they will meet again later in school. We see ECEC as part of a broad educational system and seek to have coherence in the perspective of all levels. In 2010, a revised proposed clause for kindergarten entered into force. This is a purpose clause that is the same throughout for kindergartens, schools, and vocational training. It lays out the same values, but at the same time respect the differences between the levels. We know from surveys that within our educational system, it happens that children, pupils, and students experience bullying and exclusion. This is not acceptable, and we constantly work to counter this. In 2009, a new manifesto against bullying was signed by the Prime Minister, the Minister of Education, and other stakeholders. Our strategies and policies against bullying runs throughout both kindergartens and schools. The municipalities, parents, and organizations are actively engaged, as well as the institutions and children, pupils, and students themselves. Anti-bullying work is an ongoing challenge. The amount of bullying among young people has been stable since 2007, and approximately 5% report being bullying weekly or more often. Bullying is not only verbal or physical, it can also manifest itself in rejection and in exclusion, and in the form of cyberbullying. Talking about the youngest children in terms of bullying is, of course, problematic. I'm not sure it is helpful, but the theme of inclusion-exclusion is relevant, as is friendship and well-being. Children, as well as older pupils and students, must be helped to understand the boundaries of acceptable interaction. This year's campaign is called Grown Ups Creates Friendship, and puts emphasis on the surrounding structures and the responsibility and possibilities of grown-up attitudes, actions, and support. Well-being is important for all, and it is vital to learning. Friendships form the backbone of positive togetherness. To have a sense of oneself and of belonging, to learn how to make friends, and to keep a friend should be the main objectives for ECEC. Machines can be copied and replaced, but human relations are unique. This means that the ability to establish and maintain relations is the key competence in the development of society. Staff's knowledge and understanding of children and childhood will affect how they provide children with opportunities to relate to others, to participate, play, and learn. Kindergartens have a particular responsibility for preventing potential problems and for discovering children with special needs. By providing necessary support in inclusive environments, preschool teachers and staff will contribute to a better development. Their competence is vital in order for kindergarten to make a difference. Staff competence is the most important factor for quality in ECEC. Having well-qualified teachers and staff is necessary in order to meet our ambitions for quality and for better education. Kindergarten teachers in Norway are trained at bachelor level, and together with assistants, they constitute the staff of kindergartens. Norway has a statistical average of 4 children per staff member, but only 1/3 of the staff is qualified preschool teacher. We want a larger proportion of our staff to be educated. This is why we have put in place a big recruitment campaign and reformed the kindergarten teacher education, making it more relevant to today's sector. Knowledge areas that have been strengthened are pedagogy for the youngest children, multiculturalism and inclusion, language development, and pedagogical leadership. In its first year, the recruitment campaign called The World's Finest Profession increased the number of applicants for kindergarten teacher education by 18%. In what other profession can you every day be engaged as a dragon hunter, architect of castles, rocket scientist, leader of expeditions, or superhero? After this, who doesn't want to be a kindergarten teacher? As I have already pointed out, education needs to support the development of skills such as creativity, investigation, exploration, collaboration, problem solving, and action. Confident and motivated children and youth learn more, participate more, and contribute more to their own and their community's development. It is, of course, evident to have strategies for coupling higher education, research, and innovation in society, but engaging also kindergartens and schools opens up the field and the possibilities and lays a good foundation from the start. Through the developmental work, we have made efforts to strengthen the concept and practice of innovation and entrepreneurship involving children, youths, and young adults. throughout the educational system. In 2004, we were the first country to launch a strategy for entrepreneurship in education. We called it See the Opportunities and Make Them Work. And I have some pictures with students making products and selling them. I will just say shortly about the bread you see down in the third picture in the right corner. The breadwinner is the picture, in the picture is the Princess and Dinosaur bread, developed in Rødberg Kindergarten. In collaboration with a local bakery, these bread are now being produced and sold in the community. The local authorities for health and nutrition was also engaged in cooperation to bring forward a tasty and well-balanced bread. The children was not only in charge of testing different recipes and collaborating with bakers and authorities, they also designed the packaging of the product. This is innovative community work. Creative and collaborative group learning through practical projects have engaged many young learners. It has shown both them and the society the possibilities and also the abilities they have for establishing enterprises and following through. OECD underscores the importance of creating educational policies for innovation. Learning together is authentic inquiry-oriented projects is an important part of life. Starting my speech, I proposed that broad and global discussions can promote better education both for early childhood and beyond. Opening up to the world with its diversity and differences in perspectives makes the world richer. We see ourselves and our challenges in new ways, and we can learn from each other. The number of dropouts in upper secondary level in Norway is above average. We are putting policies in place to meet this challenge. Our pupils and students scores high in international democracy studies and civic engagement. Korean students have top scores on academic results like the PISA and TIMSS rankings. Can we learn from each other's strengths and perform better for the world of tomorrow? I believe so, and I thank you for inviting us to explore how better education and care from the start can cultivate the talents needed for the future. Cultivating the talents of all and preparing them to find innovative solutions and possibilities, we have to create an education that encourages innovation, not only reproducing knowledge and fixed answers. We need to engage not only the educational institutions, but to open them to the world and involve and engage the broader society. Sir Ken Robinson ends his speech by pointing out that we need to educate the whole being, to nurture imagination, feeling of self-worth, understanding the value of a diversity of talents, because we are not only educating for the world we see today, we are educating for the future. So thank you so much for listening.
Well, you learned a lot about early education, right? Well, no wonder why she was picked as Deputy Minister of Norwegian Ministry of Education. She knows so much about practice and theory. And she really works hard for the well-being of Norwegian young children. They are really lucky, aren't they? Well, she said the effect of one good quality preschool teacher lasts for 100 years. It's the same theme what Dr. Burnett talked about, quality of good quality training for young, teachers for young children. Well, I have an experience myself that I was a kindergarten teacher from 1967 to 8. When I retired from Chungang University in 2008, 10 my students used to be kindergarteners when I was a teacher. 10 of them came and talked about all the little teaching I gave them. They talked about little experiences and the things I talked and the way I loved them. So it's for sure 50 years it lasts. Yeah, I can tell. So we really have to have a good quality kindergarten or childcare teachers. So we have to invest to kindergarten or child carers training and education. And when I visited Norway 20 years ago, they already have to have a bachelor's degree. So I really surprised. And they had the College of Early Childhood Education, 유아교육대학, in the 4-year universities. But we don't have any in Korea. So, well, that's another direction we have to go, maybe. Well, thank you for your experience sharing. So nice. Well, now you have to get, both of you have to get ready of Eunhae Park and Unsu's discussion. Questions? Okay, Eunhae, will you talk?
안녕하십니까. 유아여자대학교 유아교육과의 박은혜 교수입니다. 저한테 10분 정도가 주어진 것 같습니다. 그래서 토론을 시작을 하면서 우선 이 글로벌 포럼에 유아교육이 의제로 들어간 게 올해가 처음으로 들었습니다. 이런 귀한 자리 마련해 주셔서 감사드리고 또 초대해 주셔서 감사합니다. 신은수 교수님하고 이 두 분의 토론 원고에 대해서 어떻게 토론을 할까 논의를 하다가 제가 국내의 여러 가지 유아교육과 관련된 이슈를 이야기를 하고 이 두 분들의 토론으로부터 얻었던 시사점을 이야기를 하기로 하고 신은수 교수님이 이제 현재 해외의 유아교육의 여러 동향 그리고 우리나라가 이제 다음에 어떻게 나아가야 할지에 대한 정책 방향을 이야기하시는 것으로 그렇게 저희 둘이는 합의를 봤습니다. 그리고 이제 시간이 된다면 두 분께 각각 한 가지씩의 질문을 드리려고 합니다. 아마 노르웨이 달 차관보님께서 발표를 하실 때 와 노르웨이가 2006년 이후에 유아교육에 대한 투자를 굉장히 많이 늘렸구나라는 그래프를 보시면서 우리나라도 아마 이런 생각을 하셨을런지 모르겠습니다. 그런데 실제로 올해 2012년에 누리 과정이라는 것이 시작이 되면서 우리나라도 유아교육에 대한 투자가 늘어나기 시작을 했고요. 아마 2015년이 가면 만 3, 4, 5세 아이들을 위해서 이미 한 4조 정도의 예산을 쓸 예정으로 있는 것을 아시는 분들은 아실 겁니다. 누리 과정을 2009년부터 연구하고 또 사실은 설계했던 사람입니다. 저하고 신은수 교수님이 설계했던 사람으로 누리 과정에 대해서 물어보면요. 사람마다 굉장히 다 다르게 얘기하세요. 어떤 분은 단지 교육 과정 이렇게 얘기하시는 분들도 있고 어떤 분들은 양육비 지원, 어떤 분들은 교육비 지원 이렇게 얘기를 하시는데 설계를 했고 보도자료를 받고 그 정책의 핵심을 아는 사람으로서 정확하게 말씀을 드리면 누리 과정은 부모들에게 양육비, 보육비라고 부르죠. 지원비 혹은 유아학비 20만 원, 현재 2012년, 2015년에 30만 원까지 갈 예정입니다. 학비 지원을 하는 바우처를 통한 초등 의무교육에 준하는 만 3, 5세를 위한 보편교육 제도입니다. 그래서 처음에 제안을 할 때 누리과정이라 함은 교육재정을 통해서 만 3, 5세 아이들을 위한 보편교육 제도를 만드는 것이었고 그것을 위해서 일단 교육과정을 통해서 통일을 하고 향후 이제 그 교사의 질을 초등교사에 준하는 것으로 올리는 이제 과제가 남아 있는 그런 제도라고 말씀드릴 수 있습니다. 저희가 그 이 제도를 설계를 할 때 사실은 바넷 교수님이 아까 그 연구소 말씀을 하셨습니다. NIER 그곳에서 나온 굉장히 많은 자료들을 저희들이 참고로 보았고 그 다음에 노르웨이 같은 경우에는 아까 스쳐서 혹시 들으셨을지 모르겠지만 스타팅 스트롱 3라고 이야기를 하셨어요. 그게 스타팅 스트롱이라고 하는 게 1, 2, 3 유아교육 사실은 전 세계 유아교육과 보육의 정책 백서라고 할 수 있는데 올해 1월 달에 노르웨이 오슬로에서 그거를 릴리스를 했습니다. 그래서 두 분을 모신 거는 굉장히 큰 저희들이 아주 탁월한 선택이었다라고 생각을 하는데 우리나라의 유아교육의 이슈는 크게 세 가지로 요약을 드릴 수 있을 것 같습니다. 하나는 저출산의 문제고요. 두 번째는 교육 격차의 문제입니다. 이거는 꼭 유아의 문제만은 아니고요. 그 다음에 유아만 특별히 이제 문제가 되는 것 중에 하나가 그 유아교육의 공교육 제도로서의 위치입니다. 그래서 이 세 가지에 대한 것들이 무엇이 이슈였고 누리과정을 통해서 무엇을 해결하려고 했었고 미국을 통해서 우리가 어떤 도움을 받았는지를 잠깐 말씀을 드려보려고 합니다. 우선 저출산 문제는 다 아시겠지만 아까 그 엘리자베스 달 그 프레젠테이션에서 보셨듯이 2006년에 저희 나라가 1.17이었습니다. 출산율이. 다른 나라는 뭐 1.6부터 우리가 저출산으로 이야기를 하기 때문에 이제 난리가 나는 숫자인데 우리나라는 다른 나라에 비해서 그 국가 정부의 정책 대응이 굉장히 늦었다고 보여집니다. 2005년에 제1차 저출산 고령화 대책을 위한 기본 계획이 마련이 되었지요. 그런데 그 1차 저출산 고령화 대책 기본 계획에 의해서 사실은 그때 잡았던 정책의 기조가 뭐냐 하면 출산율이 낮아지네 여성들에게 양육의 부담을 덜어줘야 되겠다 보육시설 확충해야지가 가장 기본 전제였었습니다. 국회 예산처가 2009년, 2011년 이 정책에 대한 정책 평가 보고서를 제출을 한 바 있습니다. 소위 이야기하는 세로맞이 플랜에 의해서 한 20조 정도가 들어갔는데요. 거의 실패에 가까운 미흡한 정책이라는 평가가 나왔습니다. 왜 그랬을까요? 2차 그 저출산 고령화 대책 기본 그 계획이 나온 거에 의하면 두 가지 이유를 들고 있습니다. 하나는 뭐냐면 타겟이 틀렸다. 뭐냐면 저출산이라고 하는 게 우리나라 같은 경우에는 오히려 저소득층인 경우에는 출산율이 높습니다. 학력이 높아지고 소득계층이 높아질수록 출산율이 낮아지거든요. 그런데 이 세로맞이 플랜에 의한 타겟팅은 저소득층이었습니다. 그러니까 저소득층하고 사실은 실제로 출산율이 높아져 가야 되는 타겟층이 정확하게 맞지 않았다라는 문제가 있습니다. 이 그 저출산의 문제를 보육으로 풀 때 이것이 그 저소득층에만 물론 재원의 문제 때문에 그렇긴 합니다. 했을 때 어떤 결과가 나오는지에 대한 가장 대표적인 정책이라고 보여지고 동일한 문제를 겪었던 게 미국의 헤드스타트입니다. 많은 분들이 보육이나 저소득층 유아의 지원을 이야기할 때 헤드스타트를 이야기를 하지만 아까 그 바넷의 그 프레젠테이션에서도 보셨듯이 컴프리헨시브 서비스가 꼭 포지티브한 이펙트를 가져오는 게 아닙니다. 왜냐하면 재정을 우리가 충분하게 집어넣을 수 있으면 모르지만 제한된 재정을 집어넣을 때는 그것이 타겟이 흐트러질 수밖에 없기 때문에 초점을 맞춰야 한다. 그래서 최근에 지금 헤드스타트 평가 연구에서 이야기하는 것들은 뭐냐 하면 타겟을 맞추자. 아까 그 세 가지 장기종단 연구 얘기하셨습니다. 아베스테리안 연구 얘기하셨고 시카고 그다음에 하이스콥 이야기하셨는데 이 프로그램이 모두 성공할 수 있었던 것은 타겟이 굉장히 분명했고 그 다음에 재정이 들어갈 때 특별히 그 하이스콥 프로그램 페리 프리스쿨 같은 경우에는 질 높은 교원을 집어넣는 것으로 완전히 중점을 두었던 프로젝트입니다. 그래서 그런 것에 대한 시사점을 우리가 좀 받아야 할 것 같고요. 그 다음에 저출산의 문제는 보육으로만 해결되는 것이 아니고 사회 인프라가 갖춰져야 된다라는 이야기들을 합니다. 거기에 이제 들어가야 되는 것들이 물론 그 가정 친화 정책이라든지 이런 여러 가지 문제들이 있습니다. 단지 보육시설의 문제로 해결될 것은 아니었었어요. 그래서 올해 0-2세 무상보육에 대한 이야기가 나왔을 때 제가 한 3월 달쯤에 어느 신문에가 칼럼을 쓰면서 설계가 잘못됐다라는 이야기를 한 적도 있습니다. 그래서 저희들이 그 누리과정을 설계를 할 때 주목을 했던 게 뭐냐 하면 우리나라 부모들은 굉장히 교육에 관심이 많습니다. 다 아시는 것처럼. 그런데 왜 이 문제를 풀 때 초등부터는 교육에 초점을 맞추면서 유아는 왜 교육에 교육에 초점을 맞추지 않을까. 그래서 했던 게 2009년에 교육개발원에서 저희가 유아 무상 공교육에 대한 연구를 한 적이 있습니다. 부모들의 요구 딱 한 가지입니다. 아이들이 어려도 우리는 교육을 하고 싶다입니다. 그 교육의 핵심은 결국은 이제 교사와 교육과정이 되겠지요. 이번에 2012년에 그 OECD Education at a Glance가 발표가 되면서 저희의 그 연구가 다시 인용이 됐는데 어떤 문구로 인용이 됐는가 하면 국민의 교육에 대한 요구가 굉장히 높을 때 국가가 그것을 만족시켜주지 못하면 국민은 개인의 돈을 들여서라도, 우리 얘기를 하면 사교육이죠. 들여서라도 아이들을 교육시키고자 할 수밖에 없고 그 부담은 고스란히 저출산 문제로 나타날 것이다라는 그런 그 Education at a Glance에 보시면 저희 나라에 주는 시사점이 있습니다. 두 번째 그 교육 격차의 문제 역시 같이 연결되는 문제입니다. 결국은 유아기의 교육, 지금 뭐 보편 복지냐 선별 복지냐 많은 이야기를 하시지만 우리가 초등부터는 당연하게 보편 교육, 다시 말하면 모든 아이들이 교육을 받아야 된다고 이야기를 하면서 유아로 내려오면 이게 갑자기 선별 교육이 돼버립니다. 저소득층이라는 엄마들의 아이들을 위해 돈을 우선 써야 한다고 이야기를 하지만 유아기의 교육은 지금 저는 그 스티븐 바넷 박사님이나 또 이제 해크만 교수님 아까 언급하셨는데 그 유명한 그래프가 지금 안 나왔어요. 시카고 대학 경제학과 교수님이 유아기에 투자를 했을 때 국가가 어떻게 돌려받을 수 있는가에 대한 걸 다 계산을 하셨고 1대 16으로 돌려받는다. 아까 노르웨이는 1대 3으로 돌려받는다고 하셨는데 사실은 그 그래프로 그 노벨 경제학상을 받으셨다고 해도 과언이 아닐 정도로 유명한 그래프입니다. 그곳에서 이야기하는 거는 뭐냐면 유아기의 교육은 보편 교육이 돼야 된다는 거죠. 모든 아이들을 위한. 다행히 그 누리 과정이 시행이 되면서 유아교육 법이 개정이 됐습니다. 만 3, 5세 아이들을 위한 무상교육을 국가의 재정이 허락하는 한 다 한다. 지금은 아직 20만 원밖에 못 주지만 이제 그게 조금 더 가야 되겠죠. 그래서 장기 종단 연구를 통해서 저희들이 굉장히 많이 도움을 받았고 또 바넷 교수님으로부터 저희가 굉장히 도움을 받았었던 게 뭐냐면 초등교육의 의무교육 얘기가 나올 때마다 늘 그 미국의 K학년을 얘기하시는 분들이 참 많으세요. 그런데 참 아이러니컬하게도 바넷 교수님은 K학년 가지고는 안 된다. 왜냐하면 유아교육은 초등교육하고 특징이 다르기 때문에. 그래서 만 3, 4, 5세를 묶는 보편 공교육인 그 UPK 운동을 사실은 그 제창하신 분이십니다. 그래서 저희가 3, 5세 유아교육을 한꺼번에 묶어가는데 굉장히 도움을 많이 그 저희가 받았었던 경험이 있습니다. 초등학교 그 공교육화에 대한 이야기는 결국은 유아기의 교육이 어디에 초점이 두어져야 되느냐, 이제 놀이에 초점이 두어져야 되고 초등교육과는 성격이 다르다라는 부분이고요. 그래서 이런 부분들이 제대로 되려면 유아기 그 아이들을 교육을 시키는 교사들의 교육이 우선이 되어야 한다라는 초점을 우리가 그 생각을 해볼 수가 있겠습니다. 그래서 여기까지 제가 그 누리 과정하고 또 스티브 바넷 교수님으로부터 저희가 받았던 시사점을 간단하게 말씀드리고요. 신은수 교수님한테로 제가 넘기면서 이제 앞으로 저희한테 남은 과제가 무엇인지에 대한 이야기를 청하겠습니다.
저기 이 한국말로 박은혜 선생님이 하셨지만 she speaks English really fluently, but yeah, she's better than me, but she wanted to talk to you a lot of things fast. So why don't you talk in Korean?
예, 저도 한국말로 할 예정입니다. 여기가 한국이니까.
잠깐만요.
네.
We don't have chance to talk, professionals in other areas. So she wants to talk in Korean. So foreigners, please understand us.
예, 저도 그 박은혜 선생님이랑 그 여러 가지 정책에 대해서 연구를 했지만, 특히 그 저는 존경하는 그 바넷 교수님의 존경심은 이렇게 오랫동안 길게 그 유아교육에 대한 중요성에 대해서 알고 계시고 그것을 모든 사람들, 뭐 예를 들면 전 세계 그 Starting Strong 3에 그 릴리스 할 때도 가서 강하게 그 키노트를 하신 걸로 알고 있는데 저희 나라에서 이분들의 중요성을 알고 모신 것에 대해서 저는 국민의 한 사람으로서 굉장히 감사드립니다. 앞에서 박은혜 선생님이 누리과정과 함께 우리도 그 무상 보편교육, 그 유아교육 제도를 만드는 것에 대해서 좀 말씀을 드렸고요. 특히 그 우리가 풀어나가야 할 과제가 많다는 그런 말씀을 하셨는데, 거기에 덧붙여서 제가 말씀드리고 싶은 것은 먼저 그 우리나라 그 저출산 문제가 아까 그 국민의 그 교육 부담에 의해서 이루어졌다라는 것을 그냥 저희 나라 그 지난번 그 교육개발원에서 그 박은혜 선생님과 같이 했던 연구에 기초한 그거 이외에도 저희가 그 우리나라의 그 정책 입안을 하시는 분들이 뭐 가정 친화 정책이기보다는 어린 시기부터 그 영아 뭐 만 0세, 1세, 2세를 밖으로 나와서 우리가 길러준다라고 하는데 저는 거기에 대해서 좀 의심이 들었습니다. 왜냐하면 그 전에 한 10년 전에 스웨덴의 교수님께서 저희에게 얘기해 준 것이 아이를 집에서 엄마 아빠가 기르는 것을 보지 못한 부모들은 절대로 그 아이를 두 번째 아이를 갖지를 않는다. 그래서 너희들 정책 입안가에 대해 꼭 얘기를 해주었으면 좋겠다. 쉽게 얘기하면 육아휴직이라든지 그 다음에 부모, 아버지와 어머니가 아이를 기르는 것에 집중할 수 있는 그런 사회 시스템을 구축하는 것이 저출산을 막는 큰 아마 투자일 것이다 라는 얘기를 들었습니다. 그래서 이제 물론 그거와 더불어서 저희가 그 많은 그 사교육비의 문제, 그 다음에 또 그 다른 나라는 어떻게 특히 그 북유럽의 노르웨이, 스웨덴, 핀란드 이런 국가들은 그 한 100년 정도를 그 보육이라고 하죠. 그래서 사회복지부 체제에 있는 그 영유아를 보호하고 가르치는 제도를 갖고 있는 국가였습니다. 그런데 저희가 출산율과 기초해서 국민 소득과 함께 병행해서 분석을 해본 결과 우리나라와 비슷한 저출산의 문제를 다른 나라들도 갖고 있더라고요. 그래서 예를 들면 스웨덴 같은 경우에는 96년에 1.5 정도, 1.6 정도였고요. 그런데 다행스럽게도 그 국가들은 96년에 스웨덴은 교육부로 그 모든 0세에서 초등학교 입학 전까지 거기는 6세까지 그 유아교육 제도를 만들었는데요. 그렇게 한 다음에 지금도 출산율이 굉장히 안정되어 있고 급격히 올라가는 것을 확인했습니다. 그 나라는 쉽게 얘기하면 0에서 6세를 보육제도로 가지고 있었는데 그것을 전환했고, 노르웨이도 이제 저희가 한 40년의 출산율을 보니까 1980년대 초반에 한 0.7 정도, 1.7 정도의 출산율을 가지고 있었는데 그래도 안정적이었다가 2000년대 초반에 같은 문제, 이제 1.65 정도를 가지고 있었어요. 그런데 그 다음에 노르웨이는 2006년에 아까 다할 차관님께서 말씀하신 대로 교육부로 0에서부터 6세까지 이렇게 이전을 해서 양질의 그 교육제도를 구축을 한 이후에 지금 현재는 1.98 정도. 물론 미국은 한 번도 출산율이 떨어지지는 않았지만 지금 바넷 선생님이 얘기하신 대로 좀 우리랑 비슷한 그런 제도를 갖고 있는 것을 알 수 있었습니다. 그래서 그러한 것을 보고 저희가 우리나라가 가지고 있는 그 앞에서 저출산 문제도 해결되지 않고, 쉽게 얘기하면 HR 포럼의 그 핵심은 인재를 잘 육성하자 그러는 건데, 우리는 문제는 인재가 없어지는 상황이 생기는 그런 아주 최악의 상황에 있는 그런 국가 중에 하나입니다. 그렇다면 아까 어떠한 면에 초점을 두었을 때 출산율도 올라가고 우리가 가지고 있는 인재들을 잘 기를 수 있는가, 거기에 대해서 이제 깊이 생각을 했는데요. 그럼과 동시에 이제 저희가 제도를 만들면서 우리한테 참 좋은 그런 것이다 라고 생각했던 것이 작년 2011년 말에 발표한 유네스코와 OECD와 유로스tat이 함께 해서 국제교육 표준 교육 분류, 그 이스켓이라고 보통 얘기를 하는데요. 이스켓 0단계, 그러니까 이스켓 0단계를 구축하라는 그런 국제적인 지표와 함께 그 어떤 그 모든 국가에게 주는 제언이 있었습니다. 이스켓이라는 거는 보통 이스켓 1단계가 초등교육을 얘기하고요. 이스켓 2단계는 중등교육. 그 다음에 이제 우리가 보통 얘기하는 4년제 대학의 학위를 이스켓 5단계, 그러니까 5단계로 얘기합니다. 그런데 여기에서 저희가 주목할 것은 97년에 이스켓 그 국제 표준 교육 분류가 0단계에 대해서는 그냥 미미하게 얘기를 했었는데, 이번에 그 개정된 이스켓 2011은 굉장히 많은 그 시사점을 제공합니다. 그래서 여기에서는 그 쉽게 아주 강하게 표현해서는 OECD나 그 유네스코, 유로스tat 같은 데서는 2014년 이후에는 그 노동력 조사라고 하나요? Labor Force Survey에 이스켓 0단계가 없을 경우에는 지표에서 빠질 수도 있다. 그러니까 국가의 통계 지표에서 빠질 수도 있다라는 강력한 제안을 하고 있는데, 여기에서 그 많은 내용 중에 그 교육 대상에 대한 명확한, 우리나라가 치면 유아교육은 3에서 5세 이런 대상이 있어야 하고, 이 모든 대부분의 그 법에 대한 법령이 있어야 되고, 그 만약에 그 나라가 교육부가 있다면 교육부에서 자격을 배출하는 그 교원이 있는 국가는 그 모든 유아교육을 하는 아이들은 그 양질의 교원이 가르쳐야 한다. 그리고 그 이외에도 7가지의 지표가 있는데, 작년에 저희가 그 누리과정, 그리고 올해부터 시행되는 것에 의하면 그 무상교육비나 유아교육에 관련된 법령은 이제 어느 정도 정비가 되어 있는 것 같고요. 그리고 또 하나는 그 누리과정이라고 보통 제도와 조금 혼동을 하는 그 커리큘럼이 지금 3, 4세까지 개정이 되고 있고요. 그러니까 개발이 되어 있고, 그런데 우리나라에서는 지금 교원의 문제가 가장 큰 문제라고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 교원은 그 노르웨이 같은 경우에는 거의 초등에 준하는 그런 학력의 교원과 그 다음에 그것을 지원하는 보조교사라든가, 핀란드 같은 경우에는 널스, 이렇게 해서 팀으로 운영하는 그 영유아기에 맞는 그런 그 스태프의 그 조직이 있고 그들이 교육을 시키는 그러한 방식을 취하고 있는데, 우리나라 같은 경우에는 아까 반혜 선생님이 얘기하신 것처럼 교사대 아동 비율이라든가 이런 것들이 이제 영유아기에는 굉장히 낮아야 하고, 그러면서 상대적으로 사실은 국가가 투자해야 되는 돈이 굉장히 많아야 하는 그러한 상황인데, 우리나라는 그 OECD 국가 중에 그 공교육 GDP 대비 공교육비가 평균 OECD 평균이 0.5 정도 되는데, 우리나라는 유아교육에만 들어가는 돈은 0.1, 보육까지 합하면 한 0.2 정도 됩니다. 노르웨이 같은 경우에는 거의 GDP 대비 1% 정도, 1을 투자를 하고 있어서 너무 부러운 국가 중에 하나이고요. 더불어서 이제 노르웨이에서 저희가 좀 시사받을 수 있는 점은, 아까 컴피턴스 베이스드라는 말씀을 많이 하셨는데, 최근에 OECD에서는 우리가 전 생애를 거쳐야 하는 그런 인간의 역량, 저희는 이제 그렇게 해석하기로 했습니다. 그래서 컴피턴스, 핵심 역량이라고 되어 있는데, 노르웨이나 이런 북유럽, 그 다음에 특히 이제 저희들이 많이 벤치마킹을 했던 영국 같은 경우는 역량 기반의 그런 교육 과정을 아주 영아기부터 시작해서 초등학교, 그러니까 중고등학교 시기까지 그렇게 연계를 해서 아주 매우 좋은 교육과정을 만들었습니다. 그리고 노르웨이도 마찬가지이고요. 그래서 이 역량 기반의 컴피턴스 베이스드의 그것을 잘 도출을 해서 그 나라에 맞는 아이들을 위한 그런 교육 과정을 만드는 것이 아마 두 번째 우리가 하여야 할 일인 것 같습니다. 그러니까 우리나라는 지금 아직까지는 그런 역량을 도출하지 못하였고, 그리고 아직은 그 핵심 역량이 무엇인지에 대한 연구가 아직 필요한 국가고요. 그리고 이러한 것과 연결돼서 교육과정도 개발되어야 하고, 그 다음에 이제 마지막으로 아까 그 교사대 아동 비율이라든가 교육과정 같은 그런 문제와 함께 가장 아마 남아야 할 과제 중에 하나는 교원의 역량인 것 같습니다. 그래서 상대적으로 우리는 초중등 학교급은 높은 역량의 교원들이 있는데 약한 그런 그 역량의 교원들이 있는 것 같습니다. 그래서 저희가 다음번에 할 일은 세계 수준의 내지는 초중등 학교급의 교원과 동일한 그런 역량이 있는 교원을 양성하여 그 어린 시기부터 그 아이들의 그 교육에 투자를 한다면 우리나라도 퍽 좋은 그런 국가가 되지 않을까 하는 바람으로 토론을 마감하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
네, 감사합니다. Well, is there anything you want to add? They summarized so well, right? Yeah. So, do you have any question to ask?
제가 아까 만약에 시간이 되면 그 여쭤본다고 저희가 미리 만났을 때 그 해크만 교수님께 드렸던 질문 중에 하나가 뭐냐 하면 어느 나라든지 공적인 자금이 들어가게 되면 그것에 대한 책무성을 물을 수밖에 없습니다. 이제 미국 같은 경우에는 굉장히 많은 이제 국가의 공적 자금이 들어갔을 때 아마 아시는 분들은 아시겠지만 NCLB 법안 이런 것들에 의해서 국가의 돈이 들어갔으니까 아이들을 어떻게 교육을 시키고 있는지 우리가 테스트해보자 이제 이런 무브먼트들이 있습니다. 아마 우리나라도 지금 그 유아기 보편 교육에 굉장히 공적 자금이 이제 많이 더더군다나 이게 그 일반 그 국비가 아니고 교육재정, 교부금으로 들어가는 돈이기 때문에 이제 어느 순간에 그 교육에 대한 효과성을 이야기를 하실 것 같습니다. 그래서 제가 그 바넷 교수님한테 질문을 하나 드리고 싶은 거는 사실은 유아기의 교육의 가장 핵심은 놀이라고 이야기를 하는데 만약에 국가가 우리가 이렇게 굉장히 많은 돈을 투자를 했으니까 책무성을 보여라 라고 이야기를 할 때 우리는 이 딜레마를 어떻게 해결을 할 수 있을지에 대한 조언을 좀 한번 듣고 싶습니다.
Well, this is something that's very difficult to do, obviously. But I think by building on a system of continuous improvement, you can do that at multiple levels. So that works at the classroom level, district level, national level. At the national level, you can provide accountability data. The simplest is simply to track what is the quality of our program, what is the quality of our teaching using samples, and what are the accomplishments of our children. Are they happy? Are they healthy? Do they have the cognitive and social and emotional development that we would like to see? And simply doing that periodically and looking, is this moving in the direction we would like to see? That's the simplest way to do it. It's also possible to do periodic studies that give you more precise evaluation of the contribution of the program. But I think you don't want to do that constantly because you can end up spending as much on accountability as on providing quality.
Well, we talked a lot of numbers, investment, money, accountability, but as a moderator, I want to say, let's forget about all the numbers, accountability, and everything. Let's just remind that what Elizabeth told us, happy childhood lasts throughout life. And for this, we have to love children, young children, at home, at the community, in the nation, and especially in preschools and childcare centers. let's only think of love for young children, because young children only can grow well when they are loved, and when they can have opportunity to love others. Let's remind only love for young children. Thank you.